You've never once prayed in a temple. Maybe you haven't been inside one in years. And yet every single morning, the first thing you reach for is a small glowing screen. And the first thing you check is a number, your bank balance, your portfolio, your salary notification. You don't even realize you're kneeling.
That hit me harder than I expected because I do that. Literally the first conscious moment of my day, before I say good morning to anyone, before I've had a thought of my own, I'm already checking. And honestly, if the number is good, I feel good. If it's not, something in my chest just tightens.
And that tightening, that's the moment I want to talk about, because what we're describing isn't just a habit, it's devotion. Humans have always been worshipers. We bowed to the sun, to rain, to gods we painted on cave walls. What's fascinating and a little unsettling is that we never stopped. We just renovated the temple.
We moved it from the hilltop to the stock market, from the cathedral to the corporate ladder, from the prayer beads to the KPI dashboard.
Exactly. And here's the question that keeps me up at night. At what point did we decide that a number in a bank account is more valuable than the peace in our hearts? When did we make that trade? And did anyone even ask us if we agreed to it?
And that's exactly what we're unpacking today on the Wiser Hour.
Welcome back to the Wiser Hour. I'm Sophia, joined as always by Ethan. And today we're going somewhere that might make you a little uncomfortable. We're asking, have we built a new religion around money? And what has that cost us at the deepest level of who we are?
By the end of this conversation, you're going to see your daily routines differently, your relationship with work, with ambition, with the anxiety you feel when your finances feel uncertain. It's going to make more sense, but in a way that might require you to be honest with yourself.
This is urgent right now because we're living through what might be the most financially anxious generation in modern history. People who are more educated, more connected, and more materially comfortable than ever, and somehow more existentially empty.
If that resonates, stay with us. And if this kind of conversation is what you're looking for, subscribe. We do this every week. All right, let's get into it.
To understand where we are, we have to go back not that far to what money actually is. In every civilization, from ancient Mesopotamia to the Roman Empire, money was a tool, a technology for exchange. I have grain, you have cattle. Money is the thing that makes that conversation easier. It had no deeper meaning. It was infrastructure.
Right, but something obviously shifted. Because when I tell people I'm working on a podcast, the first question isn't, what do you talk about? It's, does it make money? Like the value of the thing can't even be assessed without a price tag on it.
That's exactly the shift. And the philosopher who mapped this most precisely was Aristotle, who drew a line between two modes of acquiring wealth. He called one crematistics, the natural kind, getting what you need to live well, and the other he found deeply troubling, the accumulation of money for its own sake, beyond any rational need. He thought that second mode was a kind of spiritual disorder.
So Aristotle was essentially diagnosing something in 350 BC that we've built entire economies around.
And then the Stoics took it further. Marcus Aurelius, who was literally the most powerful and wealthy man in the Roman world, kept a private journal where he reminded himself, almost obsessively, that external things have no power over your inner life unless you grant them that power. Seneca, who was extraordinarily rich, wrote to a friend, "It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the man who hankers after more."
And here's what gets me about that. Both of those men had everything. Marcus Aurelius was emperor. Seneca was one of the wealthiest people in Rome. They weren't writing from a monastery, renouncing the world. They were right inside it, and they still saw through it.
Because they understood what we've forgotten. Money is a great servant, but a terrible master. And somewhere between Aristotle and Instagram, money stopped being a servant. It became the metric by which we measure human worth.
You know what the most revealing thing someone can say at a dinner party is? Not, I'm a doctor or I'm a teacher. It's, I make 6 figures. That's identity now. That's the answer to who are you?
We traded who are you for how much do you make. And that is not a small trade. That is an entire philosophy of human value quietly replaced. And here's the radical insight. When your identity is your income, you are never truly secure because the number can always change. So you are always at risk of ceasing to exist.
That's a terrifying thing to sit with. Have you ever felt like a bad financial month made you feel like less of a person? Not just stressed, but somehow less valuable as a human being?
And what's fascinating is neuroscience and psychology actually confirm what these philosophers intuited thousands of years ago. The brain processes social status and financial loss in the same region, the same circuits that fire when you're rejected by the tribe. A hit to your bank account for a modern brain literally feels like a threat to survival.
So what does the science actually say?
There's a psychological phenomenon researchers call the status treadmill, closely related to what's known as the hedonic treadmill. And the mechanism is elegant and brutal. Every time you achieve a financial goal, your reference point shifts upward. The goalpost moves. You earn $50,000 and you want $100,000. You earn $100,000 and suddenly $250,000 seems like the real threshold. There is no arrival point. The system is designed to prevent arrival.
I felt genuinely seen and condemned by that at the same time, because I can trace this exact pattern in my own life. And the worst part isn't the wanting, it's the guilt. Like you hit the number you swore would be enough, and for maybe a week it feels good. And then there's this quiet voice that says, "Is that all?"
And that voice isn't weakness. That's the architecture of the system working exactly as designed. Alain de Botton, the philosopher and writer, argued in Status Anxiety that modern capitalism doesn't just sell products, it sells the implication that your worth as a person is connected to your economic output. And once that belief is in you, the market has a permanent customer.
So you're saying de-anxiety isn't a bug, it's a feature.
It keeps the treadmill running. Now look at how we've organized our days around this belief. The alarm before sunrise, the commute, the emails at 10 p.m., the inability to take a holiday without checking in. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability and connection found that the people most consumed by productivity and busyness are often the ones most afraid of what they'd feel if they stopped. The busyness is armor.
Okay, this one is genuinely uncomfortable because I use busyness as a kind of identity too. I've been so busy feels like saying I'm important, I matter. If I'm not busy, am I even doing anything?
And compare that to how we describe religion. People go to services on a schedule they would feel guilty missing. They repeat rituals, daily prayers, weekly observances that reinforce the central belief. They make sacrifices in the present for a promised reward in the future, heaven. Now, describe a corporate career. Mandatory schedule, daily rituals of emails and meetings and performance reviews. Sacrifice your health, your time, your relationships now for what? Retirement, the secular paradise that's always 30 years away.
So what you're saying is most of us have been practicing a religion our entire lives and just didn't know it had a name.
And the cost of never seeing this, of never questioning the God you're serving, is a life where your most alive years are traded for a future that arrives, if it arrives at all, when you're too tired to enjoy it. The most painful statistic I've ever read: the average person spends 90,000 hours of their life at work. 90,000 hours. And when researchers ask people on their deathbeds what they regret, not one person says they wished they worked more.
Have you noticed this in yourself? Working through something that mattered to hit a deadline for something that didn't? Drop it in the comments. We genuinely want to know we're not the only ones.
So now the question becomes, what do we actually do with this?
That's the part I've been waiting for.
Here's the shift I want to make. And I need to say up front, this isn't a tips for work-life balance conversation. We're not going to say log off at 5 p.m. and practice gratitude. What I want to offer is a different way of seeing, because when the seeing changes, the behavior changes naturally.
And I want to name the real difficulty here, because most self-help lands right at this point and then floats away. It's easy to say detach your worth from your wealth. It's another thing to actually do it when your rent is due and your boss is watching.
Which is why we start with what Viktor Frankl called meaning over comfort. Frankl survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, lost nearly everything, and came out the other side with this core insight. A person can endure almost any suffering if they have a reason for it. The crisis isn't pain, it's emptiness, it's suffering without meaning, and money, as a reason for suffering, eventually reveals itself as hollow.
Okay, but that one is genuinely hard because for most people, money isn't an abstract. It's the rent, it's the school fees, it's survival.
And Frankl never dismissed that. The practice isn't to stop earning, it's to stop letting earning be the answer to the question, what am I for? Because that question needs a different answer. So here are 3 specific practices, each rooted in what we've discussed. The first is what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control, and specifically applying it to your finances. Every week, separate your financial life into 2 lists. What is genuinely within my control and what is not? Markets fluctuate, not in your control. Whether you spend intentionally today, within your control. Most financial anxiety lives in the uncontrollable column, and we exhaust ourselves there. The practice is to act decisively on what you can influence and release the rest, not passively, with the active discipline the Stoics called the reserved clause.
That one I can actually do, but here's what I know will happen. I'll write the list and then immediately go back to obsessing over the uncontrollable column, because that's where the anxiety lives.
Which is why you need the second practice, what I'd call scheduled financial silence. 1 day a week, no financial inputs, no checking the app, no reading the markets, no comparing your income to anyone else's. This isn't avoidance, it's practicing the proof that you can exist without the number. The peace you feel when you're not checking, that's not the absence of something. That's you. That's what remains.
The one most people will skip is that one, because the anxiety itself has become familiar. It feels productive, even when it's just spinning.
The third practice is the oldest, Aristotle's question. What is this for? Before any significant financial decision, ask, what kind of life is this money in service of? Not can I afford it, but does this bring me closer to the life I actually want to be living? That question interrupts the automatic. It forces the money back into the role of servant.
I'll be honest, I'm reasonably good at the first 2 and I almost never do the third, because it requires a level of clarity about what I actually want that I don't always have.
And most people know all 3 of these and still don't do them, not because they're lazy, but because the system they're embedded in works against it. The treadmill is powerful. The voices that say just a little more are loud. Acknowledging that isn't giving up. It's being clear-eyed about what you're working against.
So this week, one concrete thing. Pick one financial ritual you have, the morning phone check, the late night scrolling through accounts, and before you do it, ask, what am I hoping to feel right now? Just notice. Don't change anything yet. Just notice. Okay, let's bring it all together.
Here's the single truth this entire conversation has been building toward. You are not a net worth. You are a life. And a life is measured in aliveness, in depth of presence, in quality of connection, in the moments when you were so fully here that you forgot to check anything.
I've been sitting with this topic for days now, and what's shifted for me is something simple. I started asking in quiet moments, if all of this disappeared tomorrow, what would remain? And the answer that keeps coming back isn't nothing. There's something that doesn't have a dollar amount, something that was there before the first paycheck and will be there after the last one.
Regardless of where you come from, how old you are, what you believe, there is a version of you that existed before you learned what you were worth in someone else's economy. A version that found things beautiful, that laughed without calculating returns, that loved without tallying the returns. That person didn't disappear. They just got quieter as the noise got louder.
And if you're listening to this right now carrying something heavy, the debt, the gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be, the feeling that you've been running hard and somehow falling behind, I want to say something that isn't flattery. The fact that this bothers you means your soul is still in the conversation. The people who are truly lost aren't anxious, they've stopped asking.
The ancient Chinese concept of Wu Wei from Taoism translates roughly as effortless action. Not passive, but aligned, moving with the current of what you actually are rather than against it in pursuit of what the market says you should be. And maybe the deepest wisdom isn't in having the answer, it's in learning to sit with the question, what am I serving, and is it worthy of me?
What does this bring up for you? What God have you been serving, knowingly or not? We genuinely want to know. Drop it in the comments. This conversation continues there. And that brings us to our closing thoughts.
So here's what we've walked through together. Money began as a tool and became a theology, a system of beliefs, rituals, and promised salvation that colonized our identities without asking permission. The philosophers saw it, the psychologists measured it, and somewhere in you already knew it. You just needed the language.
The richest person isn't the one who has the most, it's the one who needs the least. And that's not a saying for a wall poster. That's a genuinely radical act of defiance against a system that profits from your perpetual dissatisfaction.
Growth is uncomfortable and slow and worth it. Not because the numbers will get better. They might not. But because the alternative is spending the one life you have building a temple to something that will never actually give you what you're looking for.
If this conversation meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't. And honestly, if you disagreed with anything, we want that in the comments too. The best conversations start with friction.
Next week, we're going somewhere even deeper, into the hidden belief that might be quietly running your most important decisions without you ever having chosen it.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing. This is the Wiser Hour.